All right, well, now it's time to run our first container. I like to say, well, it's about time. Like, we've been talking about Kubernetes for a few hours now, and we still haven't run a container, so let's do it. Well, first, bad news, on Kubernetes, you can't just run a container. One doesn't simply run a container on Kubernetes, Mr. Frodo. You can only run a pod, and in the pod, there's going to be a container. You don't have to put multiple containers in the pod. You can perfectly well put just one container, that's fine. Okay, so we're going to run a pod with a container in it, and I'm going to use the ping command. Why? Because I want something that generates some output so that I can see that the container is running. So I'm going to run ping in a container. Most amazing utilization of containers this year. So CubeCTL Run, and this will look a lot like Docker Run. CubeCTL Run, and so differences, to contrast with Docker Run. So when we do a Docker Run, the name is optional, and by default we are in the foreground, but we could put dash dash detach if we want to be in the background, or dash D. And then you put the image, and then the command that you want to run. With CubeCTL Run, the name is mandatory and comes first. So your CubeCTL Run, the name, and then by default it's going to be detached, and if you want to attach, you have to put dash dash attach. And the image is mandatory, but must be specified with dash dash image, and then you could put a command. Okay, if that is a little bit confusing, basically to give you like two identical commands. On Docker, I would do docker run dash dash name ping pong dash dash detach alpine ping localhost. On Kubernetes, I would do kubectl run ping pong dash dash image alpine ping localhost. Well, let's do exactly that. So kubectl run ping pong dash dash image alpine ping localhost. It says pod ping pong created, and indeed if I do kubectl get pods, I have a pod named ping pong, it's running, it's been here for 5 seconds, awesome. How can I check that this pod is really running? Well, I can do kubectl logs ping pong, and this is going to show me the output of the container in the pod. I can even do dash dash tail to say I only want the last X lines of output, dash dash follow or dash F, and in that case it's going to follow, to keep streaming the logs for me. Okay, that was our first container. Great. We saw the output, so that's great. Now we would like to add some scaling. Because I was told that with Kubernetes I could scale my applications very easily, so I want to do that. kubectl, how do I scale something? Well, I have a kubectl scale command, which is going to be very useful and convenient. And by the way, one thing that you will notice is that there are many kubectl commands that will look like this. kubectl, verb or action, then the type or kind of object, then the name, and then some flags. So for instance, for kubectl scale, what do I want to scale? A pod, which one? Ping pong. And for the flags, I don't know exactly what we're gonna do, but let's try to figure it out. Scale pod ping pong. When I do that, it says required flags replicas not set. Okay, that was easy. Dash dash replicas. Let's say I want 3 pings at the same time, so I do this, and now I get an interesting error message. It says not found. The server could not find the requested resource. And I'm like, well, this is a lie, because I can see that my ping pong pod, my ping pong resource is here. So what are you talking about? What is this resource that you cannot find? Well, I'm going to add a -v6 here so that I can see exactly the requests that are made by kubectl. And I'm going to see two requests. First, I have a request to the address of the API server, API v1 namespaces default pods ping pong. Okay, that's a pretty long path for that pod, but it says 200 okay, so that worked. Now we keep looking and we have, oops, sorry, and we have a patch request on almost exactly the same address. I say almost exactly because it starts the same way, but at the end, instead of pods ping pong, we have pods ping pong scale, and that's a 404. What's happening here? Well, when I do a kubectl scale, conceptually, what I do is that I tell Kubernetes, go to that object. You will see there is a setting called scale. You know, imagine it could be a wheel that you have to turn, or it could be a slider that you put up and down. So get that scaling thing and put it to 3. So Kubernetes diligently goes to the pod, looks at the pod, and is like, I'm sorry, but I don't see a scale thing on the pod. So it comes back to me and says, 404, I don't see a scale resource on the pod. So that's interesting. Does that mean that we cannot scale a pod? Not exactly, but we don't do it that way. So remember, the pod is the basic unit of scaling. So when I want to scale something, I don't put multiple containers in the pod, I put multiple pods. So if I want to scale up that thing, I need to create multiple pods. I can't just go to one pod and say, scale that by creating multiple copies of it. No, I need to create multiple pods. How do I create multiple pods? Well, first, there is the very manual artisan technique where I just kubectl run ping pong. Of course, if I do that, it says ping pong already exists. I'm like, okay, no problem. Let me do it again. kubectl run ping pong 2, ping pong 3, and within seconds, I get ping pong 2, ping pong 3. It works, but it's not super clean. That's clearly not like that we will do it in practice, but it kind of works. You know, you can create multiple pods. That's fine. Now, the problem is if I want to scale to 5, what am I going to do here? Like, well, I mean, you know, I just did this, so I could say, oh, easy, just create ping pong 4 and ping pong 5. Yeah, but if I want to do that in a script, if I want to scale to 5, I would need to count how many we have, you know, make a difference. Oh, you have 3 pods and you want 5, so I need to create 2. Now, if you scale to 5, but in fact you already have 9 pods, it means that we want to remove 4. So, you know, I'm starting to think, oh, I need to write a script to add and remove pods. That doesn't seem great. I thought that Kubernetes should make our lives easier here. Is that really the solution? And of course, there is a better way. The better way is to use a controller that's going to, well, control the pods. So what does that mean? Imagine like an umbrella above my pods, or you could also say a little bit like a babysitter taking care of the pods. And so what I do is that, okay, so earlier, you know, what I did was basically I wanted to create a pod. So I'm creating a manifest. So Alpine, and I put like a kind pod. So that's what I did earlier. When I did CubeCTL Run, what really happens is that kubectl creates that manifest, and then sticks it on etcd in the control plane. And then there are controllers acting on that. So now, what I would like to do, something a little bit different. So I'm going to write another manifest. And that manifest, instead of being a pod, it's going to be a replica set. Okay, so instead of just having one pod, now I have a replica set, and it's exactly the same idea, except as you can see on the side, there is something indicating how many you want. So technically, a replica set, it's just like a pod, except that you have this big scaling button next to it that says how many pods like this do I want. So here, the right solution would be to create a replica set. And that replica set would then take care of creating pods.